Yes, good morning, students. Now, through this video clip, I'm going to connect with to teach the third chapter of business study, that is private, public, and global enterprises. In the second chapter of business study, we have studied types of private enterprises. In this chapter, we are going to study the form of public sector enterprises. So, first of all, I am going to make you understand the role of private sector versus public sector since independence. After getting the independence, the government, they are providing a maximum role. They play an important role. They give due importance, dominant role to the public sector enterprise. Many undertakings are to be established, many government companies are to be nationalized, companies are to be established that will be established for the development of economy. Means the government have given more role to public sector and very restricted role, less role to the private sector in the economy, in the development of economy. After giving restriction on private sector play a very important role in the development of economy. And this restriction is to be put on private sector by licensing policy for establishment also and for expansion also. If they want to expand their business and if they want to establish new industry, private sector, so they have to get the written permission from the government. And after that, after putting many restrictions and giving less role to the public sector played a very important role for the development of economy in that period after independence. And if I'm talking about public sector, after giving more role to the public sector, they incur lots of loss and even less profit. Some industries are there, some undertakings are there, their condition is good, but they are able to earn only less profit, and most of the public sector undertakings are incurring much loss. The budget, it is to be passed, and this loss is to be covered from the treasury of government, from the budget of government. That is to be keep for the different purpose, for the different development of economy. So by seeing all these things, after 1991, the government changed its economic reforms with the policy liberalization, privatization and globalization, in that private sector will get more role and it reduced the role of public sector in the economy. So in this chapter, we are going to discuss the form of public sector enterprises. So the next topic, that is form of public sector enterprises. Types of public sector enterprises, these are three types: departmental undertakings, public corporation and government company. So we are going to understand one by one these forms to make us understand public sector enterprises. So first is departmental undertaking. If I am talking about this form of business, form of enterprises, that is the very oldest form of public sector enterprise. That is the very oldest form of public sector enterprises. The departmental undertaking, it is under the overall control of one ministry or department of government. It has no separate legal entity. That is clear. For example, railway, defense, post and telegraph, telephone services, broadcasting. These are the example of departmental undertaking. Is it clear? Next, that is features of it to make you more clear, so you are able to understand what is it. First, that it is totally operate under the overall control of one ministry of central or state government. That is clear. Next, it has that type of organization. Enterprises have no separate legal entity. They are under the operation, under the managingship, ownership of government. These companies, these enterprises are financed from the annual budget of government that has to be present before the parliament. And these are under the direct control of departmental head, and the ministry, concerned ministry, is accountable for giving the answer. That is clear. Now next, that is merits and demerits. What are its this enterprises have advantage and what are their disadvantage? So first, easy formation. It's very easy to form the departmental undertakings because no registration is compulsory or no registration is required to form legally, because it is operate under the control of ministry or department of government. So that's why registration is not compulsory to form it. That's why it is its objective. Next, effective control. As you know, it is to be controlled under the ministry or department, means centralized. All the power, all the decisions should be taken by the ministry of department of government. So it has an effective control. That is clear. Optimum utilization of fund. Optimum utilization of fund means the fund that is to be utilized in a proper way, as it is to be sanctioned from ministerial sanction, from budget, and after passing that budget, account is to be maintained, auditing will be there, audit control. So because of all the things, the fund is to be utilized in a well manner, in a fully way. That is clear, in an optimum way. Last, that is accountability. As there is a direct control under the parliament, it is directly controlled under the ministry of department. So the performance of these undertakings can be discussed each and every activity in parliament. So it is answerable in public, before the public, and everyone can, and everything is to be fair in this, and it is answerable because if any fault will be there or any benefit, it is to be answerable before the parliament, before the public. Clear? Now, disadvantage of this. First, that is inflexibility. Inflexibility means those who are working under this undertaking, departmental undertaking, they are follow the strict rules and regulation which is to be made under the Ministry of Department. As you know, in this type of ad, it is controlled by Ministry of Department, so there is too much interference of minister and top official. It is to be considered as one of the government office that reduce the flexibility and efficiency of the people, those who are working under the undertaking. They are not able to take any decision by themselves. Next topic, that is lack of motivation. Lack of motivation, it means these undertakings have no power to utilize their undertaking revenue because it is to be deposited in the treasury of government, and even there will be a no incentive if the people, those who are working, the employees, those who are working under this undertaking, they are not getting any incentive to maximize the profit. It means there is no direct link between the efforts and reward. Generally, if promotion will be there, it is to be on the basis of what? It is to be basis of it is on the basis of seniority. Means those who are senior, those who are working from long time, he can be promoted, not on the basis of efforts. So employees of that undertakings are not putting their best efforts for maximizing the profit or performing their task efficiently. That is clear. Next, that is lack of financial autonomy. Lack of financial autonomy means these undertaking, they cannot make their plan for long-term investment project, as the budget of these undertaking are passed from under the control of government, and the undertakings are not allowed to use their own revenue because these are to be deposited in the treasury of government. There will be a no independency, no freedom for utilizing the fund in their own way. So when they are not free to use the revenues, if they have any ideas for a long term investment, for a profitable investment. That is clear. Last, that is inefficient management. Inefficient management, it means that is these are departmental undertaking, these are managed by government offices, and these officers, these are totally overburdened with the paperwork. As you know, in departmental editing, lots of paperwork is there, and they are spending more time to answer the query from different ministry of department, from their concerned ministry, from concerned parliament, and even they can be transferred anytime. The transfer can be done if they are not working according to the instruction of the ministry. Because of that, they are not having that much of efficiency which they are required. So that inefficiency or less sense of responsibility can be occur in their work. That is clear. Now these are the things that we make you understand departmental undertakings. Now the next form of business, that is public corporation. Public corporation, it is a body which is corporate, formed by a special act of parliament or by the central or by the legislature. This public corporation is fully financed by government. Means its power, its limitation, its activity are also decided by the act of parliament. That is clear. If I am talking about what type of enterprises these are, these are airlines, Indian Airlines, State Bank of India, LIC. These are some example of public corporation. It is also considered as statutory corporation. Clear? Now I am going to make you understand with its feature. As the first feature, that it is to be created by an act of parliament. Next, the objective, power and limitation of public corporation are to be specified in the act only. It is operate under the total control of central or state government. Its work is operated under the total control of central or state government. One feature is that it enjoy a administrative autonomy. means they have a freedom to manage its matter by itself. There will be no interference by the government in their work. That is clear. Some more are there. That is the main motive of this corporation is to provide service to the general public. That's with the help of bank as State Bank of India. Rather, if I'm comparing the account holder which are to be in other bank are less as compared to in SBI, State Bank of India, because people have more faith on these corporation. Clear? Now I am going to make you understand the next, that is merits and demerits. Merits and demerits. The first that is I am going to understand, that is the advantage of public corporation. The advantage of public corporation first is administrative autonomy. As I have told you, these type of corporation, public corporation, they are free, they are independent to manage its own matters and own corporation matters by itself only, and there will be too much flexibility to take the decision also. That is clear. Next, that is quick decision. Under this under the quick decision, it means these corporation is relatively free from delay in action, delay in taking decision. As you know, there is less paperwork in this, less formalities are to be completed before taking any decision. So in that type of corporation, the decision should be taken very fast by the those who are working under public corporation. Clear? Next, that is service motive. If I am talking about public corporation, the activities of these public corporation are discussed in parliament, and it always makes sure that whatever the activities they are performing, it always perform to protect the interest of public. Means they are established their corporation especially for what? Especially for providing services to the general public. Clear? Next, that is professional management. Professional management, if I am talking about it, professional management means under this business corporation, public corporation enterprises, if I am talking about the board of directors, these are business experts, and even they are professional specialized experts in their different field, in their own field. And if I am talking about the representative of various groups such as labor, consumer, these are also nominated by the government, appointed by the government, and these representatives are also having a special knowledge in their special field. And then after that, by ensuring that, then government is going to select them and appoint them as a representative of various groups. Next, that is demerits. The disadvantage of public corporation. First, that is autonomy on paper only. If I am talking about the freedom, flexibility of public corporation, it is only for show off. It is only on paper. Means practically ministers, government officers, political party, most of the time they interfere in the work of these public corporation. They always interrupt in the work, and they insist that the people, those who are working under this, they have to direct or follow the instruction which have been given by the ministry, government officer and political parties. Means they should carry out their work according to their wish. So this autonomy that we have discussed, this is only on paper, not reality. Clear? Next, that is lack of initiative. As these type of corporation, they don't face any competition, and even these are not guided for profit motive. Means their aim is not to provide, to earn, to or to maximize the profit, but their aim is for providing services. So they are not the employees. Those who are working in these corporations, they do not take any type of initiative to increase the profit, and even do not take any initiative, any step forward to reduce the loss. So because of that, the loss which is to be incurred by these corporations, it is to be settled down by the government from their treasury. Is it clear? Next, that is rigid structure. Rigid structure. Yes, under this, if I am talking about the objective, power, limitation, these activities are to be decided under the act, under the Parliamentary Act. And these acts are amended only by the amending act only. These rules are to be amended by the statute or the act only. And by making this act, it will consume more time, and it is very complicated task. And the people, they do not do anything when they according to his own creativity and talent. So they have to follow the objective which have been decided, the power which have been decided under the Parliamentary Act. They should work according to it only. Clear? Next, that is unfair practices. Yes. Those who are governing, those who are controlling the board of public corporation, even may involve in unfair practices for covering their loss. Even they may charge high prices to cover up from these, to overcome from these inefficiency. Suppose sometime bank, they are charging high rate of interest for covering their loss. So they may involve in the unfair practices also to cover up their inefficiency in the economy. Is it clear? So these are the advantage, disadvantage of this company. Now next I am going to make you understand, that is government company. Government company. Yes. Government company. Any company in which at least 51% of the paid up share capital, that is to be held by the central or state government, that company is to be considered as government company. Means any company in which central or state government have 51% share, paid up share capital, that company are to be considered as government company. For example, Steel Authority of India, Gas Authority of India Limited India, State Trading Corporation, Hindustan Machine Tools. These are the example of government company. Clear? Now to make you more understand, we should go through with that is your features and advantage and disadvantage. If I am talking about its feature, the first feature, that is registration. As it is compulsory to get the registration, means the government company get it registered under the Company Act 1956. All the rules and regulation of Company Act are to be applicable, are to be implemented in government company. It can be exempt its company from some provision by passing a special resolution if they want to exempt, if they want to avoid some provision in their company. Clear? Next, that is ownership. The company is wholly or partially, that is to be owned, controlled by the government. The share capital of company is owned by the government of India, and that is in the name of president. The share capital which is to be owned by the government, it is on the name of president. Clear? Next, that is management. Government companies, these are managed by the board of directors, and these board of directors are directly nominated by the government and other shareholder. And even the government has full authority to appoint majority of its director in the government company. That is clear? Next, that is financial autonomy. Financial autonomy. These company, the government company, they enjoying borrowing powers. Means government companies can raise capital by issuing various securities such as share debentures, bonds, etc. And these company free to use its revenue for the growth, for the expansion of its company. That is clear? So maybe one more, that is it has a separate legal entity. Means the government company, these had separate legal existence, these had separate legal entity. These had separate legal existence. Means these government company can buy and sell their property in its own name. These companies can enter in any of the country in its own name, and there will be no interruption. There will be a separation of government interference in these company. Clear? So these are the features that make you understand clearly about the government company. Now I am going to make you understand merits and demerits. First, that is administrative autonomy. The government company is free from the government and political interference. These companies can function freely, and even they can carry out their work in under the general guidance of government, and they can carry their work under the general vigilance or supervision of government. Even suitable changes can be introduced whenever it is required within the provision of Company Act. According to the Company Act, they can make any changes if they wish. That is clear. Next, that is greater flexibility. As these companies managed, financed and audited just like other private company. Therefore, there should be a great flexibility, great freedom for the operation, and even to take decision, and to without delay in action they can perform their services, they can perform their activities and running the enterprises. Efficient staff. If I am talking about the staff member of employees of these companies, they can have their own rules and regulation for these companies. They have their own rules and regulation for recruitment and selection, and even to decide the remuneration of employees. So these companies always prefer to appoint professional and specialized people by offering a better services, and also providing a good working condition, and also providing services and a good adequate amount of salary. They can appoint experts, specialized and professionals, clear, for running their business activity of government company. Clear? Next, that is demerits. Demerits of government company. First, autonomy on paper only. Yes. whatever they're talking about, their flexibility, their freedom, it's only on paper. Practically it is not there. In actual practice, the government, as they have a 51% share and they have a major shareholders, so they always go through with the dictate terms, and they want the work get done in its government way, in its own way, not by the company's wish. Clear? As 51% shareholder are there in the government company, so they dictate the terms and get the work done in their own way. Is it clear? Next, that is political interference. Political interference. The government company, these are treated as a personal property of ministers. Means ministers, they are considering as a personal property to these government company. They always interfere in the work of government company. Even the policy, the operational policy are always formed according to the whims and fantasies of ministry. That is clear? Means they want that the work should be carried out according to the ministry's way. Means they should not work, and most of the time they interfere in the work of government company. Last, that is board packed with government representatives. Yes, if I am talking about the board of members, the board of directors in these government company, as you know, it is appointed by whom? It is appointed by government, as they have maximum share in the company. So these directors are always try to battering the government rather than improving the efficiency of the government company. So because of that, these are become the disadvantage of these company. Clear? Yes, now the next topic, that is changing role of public sector. As you know, at the time of development, the priority means the dominant role has been played in the country for the economic development by the public sector. But due to impressive role of public enterprises, after their dominant role, India country suffer several problems like poor project planning, excessive overheads, means that is the expenses exceed the revenue, overstaffing, underutilization of capacity. So that type of problem is to be arising before the government. So for that, to overcome from these problems and to bring efficiency in the level of public sector, some initiatives should be taken by government by saying as the public sector enterprises performance is not remarkable, but then also government cannot ignore the development of public sector, because these countries are only help out to the civic problem, social problem like poverty, unemployment, imbalance in regional growth. But after inefficiency of public sector, government have decided and take some steps to restructure the government policy towards the public sector. So since 1991, government has made changes in their economic reforms, especially in case of public sector. What changes they have done that we are going to study. First, that is reduction in the number of industry which is reserved for public sector from 17 to 8. Means according to Industrial Policy 1956, there was 17 industries who enjoyed a public sector dominant role. So the government have taken initiative steps to reduce from 17 to 8, and till 2001 8 to it will reduce from 8 to 3. Now under the public sector, only 3 industries are under the control of public sector and public undertakings, and these are atomic energy, arms, rail transport. These are under the government control, and rest of the industries are to be privatized with the privatization policy, because government haven't performed a good role to for the purpose of improving these industry, and they didn't put any efforts in the development of economy. So government have taken initiative to reduce the control of public sector from 17 to 8, and in 2001 8 to 3. That is clear. Next, I am going to explain that is disinvestment policy. Disinvestment means transfer of or sale of equity share of public sector to private sector and general public. Disinvestment policy, it is the policy in which transfer of shares from public sector to private sector. Government, they decide that they withdraw its holding from public sector undertaking and encouraging the private sector that they should participate in the management of these public sector unit, as it was expected that it will improve the private sector. They are able to improve the condition efficiency of these public sector undertaking. The main motto of privatization is that releasing the large amount of public fund which is blocked in these units and utilizing them for some social project like education and health. Means whatever the fund that is to be blocked in these area, after transferring the shares from to private sector, whatever the fund that is blocked in these units, it should be utilized for the development of some social project like education, health facility, etc. Next objective, that is it reduce the debt and interest burden which these public sector units have taken. Next, they transferring the risk from public sector to private sector, reducing the government control in these units, as they haven't played a good role in the development of the economy, and discouraging government monopoly, for example telecom industry, as they haven't performed in a well manner. So because of that, they are going to reduce its role which have to be played by private sector, and that is the main motto, to privatize these industry. Clear? Next policy, that is policy regarding SIC units. If I am talking about the policy which have been made by the government regarding these SIC units means all the loss-making public sector enterprises was handed over to one board, that is Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction, which incur more loss to that industries. They are hand over to the BIFR, that is Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction Board, and they decide to wind up some very SIC units which cannot be, there will be no possibility to revive it, and those who have some rehabilitates and it can be revived where there is some scope to convert into healthy units. So to those units they are reviving it, but those there is no chance and there is no scope in the development or to convert into healthy units, that should be wind up. As because of that, lot of opposition it was, the workers, those who are working, the employees, those who are working in these units, they opposed which industries are going to be closed down. So the government, they set up a national renewal fund to compensate the worker and also offer them some VRS, that is voluntary retirement scheme. So it will be beneficial for them also. There are many enterprises which were very sick, so government they are not in that position to feed them. So these board, they are going to wind up it, and those who have some capability, rehability, that can be revived in a converted into healthy units. Clear? Next, that is last, memorandum of undertaking. Yes, under memorandum of understanding, the public sector is given a greater freedom, but they have got, means the board have given the target, the government have given some target, and to achieve this target, these units are granted operational freedom, but they are accountable for not achieving the result on time. Means some units which is to be revived, to them also that they should perform in a well manner, efficiently and effectively, target should be given, and those units are able to achieve target, they will get permission to operate their activity freely without any interruption, but they are answerable if they are not achieving the result, achieving the objective on time. So with this, unnecessary interference of minister can be reduced also, and more autonomy is granted to these units, so they will able to improve their improve their units, and if through this they are answerable also, but after giving authority, they are accountable also for a specific result. Clear? Next topic, that is multinational company, or we can say global enterprises. In multinational, it consists two words. It have two words, multi and national. Multi means many and national means countries or nations. So multinational means a company which are operated in many countries are to be considered as multinational companies. That type of companies has lots of branches, factories, workshop in different countries. This is also considered as multinational corporation, transnational corporation, global enterprises or international enterprises. The head office of these company, that is situated in one country, that is in home country. That is clear? And it carry their business in other countries. For example, Coca-Cola, Hyundai, Nike, Reebok, L'Oreal, Sony. These are some example of multinational company. That is clear? Now I am coming to make you understand the features, the characteristics of multinational company that will make you understand in a well manner. First, Gyan insights. If I am talking about these companies, their assets and sales are quite large. Their operational means they are operating, these companies are operating at a large scale. It has their operation are so large, as so huge, that sometime even its sales turnover exceed the gross national product of developing country. It large in size, large companies are there, its operation is large, it require more capital, having more assets and sales. And even sometimes its sales turnover, it exceed the GNP, gross national product, of a developing country where it is situated. For example, the physical assets of international business machine exceed $8 billion. So it increase the GNP. So that type of situation can be occur. That is clear to everyone. Next, international operation. If I am talking about these companies, these are operated in more than one country. More than one country, its branches there, factories are there, offices, which is established in different country, not in only one country that we have discussed. And it's operate through its network of branches, factories, subsidiaries in the host country. That example I have given. Clear? Next, that is professional management. Obviously, if I am talking about these companies, they always employs the professional experts which have a professional knowledge, specialized people, because they are providing a good amount of salary, and their work is as they are operating at a global market. Obviously they employ professional which are having a special knowledge in their field, and also after selecting them, they are keeping on updating the knowledge of the skill of their employees by providing them time to time training. It always employs those professionals, those who are able to handle with the advanced technology, not to them those who are not capable to operate the advanced technology, because it incur much loss to them. Next, that is centralized control. Yes, as we have discussed, these multinational companies, their branches are spread in different part of the country, but these branches, these factories, these subsidiaries which are situated in different host countries are controlled and managed from the headquarter which is located in the home country. All the branches operation or it operate their activity according to the policy which is to be formed, which is to be framed by the headquarter. Means their work, their operational activity, their managerial activities, their recruitment process, salary, that should be decided from headquarter in which is situated in home country. Clear? Next, that is sophisticated technology. Sophisticated means advanced technology. So I am talking about if these company, multinational company, always make use of latest technology which are to be supplied world class product. Means they always use that technology which are advanced, which is sophisticated, and because the reason behind it, because they want to supply a world class product to make a goodwill of its firm. They always go through with the capital intensive technology and always go through with the innovative technique of production for producing the goods and services. That is clear? Yes. Now the next topic, that is joint venture. Joint venture. Joint venture means when two or more than two firms join together to establish a new enterprises, then it is to be considered as joint venture, or we can say joint enterprises. Suppose in that two firms contributed their capital, they are also participating in the management of enterprises togetherly. Then that type of business can be considered as what? Joint ventures. Okay. Next, in simple word, we can say that joint enterprises are the partnership of two or more than two firms. Or when the partnership are going between two firms, then it is to be considered as joint ventures. That is clear? Okay. Some example I am giving to make you understand. Even in this, one more thing. Even in this thing, in this joint enterprises, not only the firm which are of same country, but two different countries firm can join together to form a joint enterprises to establish a new business activity, to run a new business activity. So that's why I'm making it, because it is not compulsory that two firm or more than two firm can join together of same country. No, two firm or more than two firm of different countries can also join together. Suppose Indian company and Japan company can join together to run any commercial activities. Commercial enterprises are to be considered as joint venture. Clear? Some example I am giving, just say, like Tata Iron and Steel Company joined with, that is one government company, that is IPCOL, to promote IPL Tata. Tungbhadra Industry of India and Yamaha Motor Company of Japan, they joined together to form a Birla Yamaha Limited company. Maruti Company and Suzuki Company of Japan, Maruti Company of India and Suzuki Company of Japan, they joined together to form a Maruti Suzuki India Limited. So that these are some examples which is to be jointly come together to establish or to running any commercial activity in the economy, that are to be considered as joint ventures. That is clear to everyone? Now I am going to make you understand, and you will be more understand when you will go through with the features of joint ventures. First, reduces competition. As when two companies come together, join together, obviously the result will be reducing in competition. Means instead of wasting resource in competition, they're going to join together for improving the strength of their organization and also for putting their best efforts for achieving the organizational objective. Instead of giving competition, they are coming together, jointly together, and give a more tough fight to the other company, and it will improve their strength. It will improve the strength of the organization also. That is clear. Next, that is reduces risk. As you know, for new and innovative enterprises, obviously the risk was too high, as these are new industries. They have faced new firms, they have innovative ventures, so they want to get the faith of the customer, faith of the public on their. So to reduce these things, to reduce this high risk, two companies, they join together and share this risk, whatever the risk that is to be faced by the your company which they want to jointly together. As you know, when the new industries has come, obviously the people, the customer, they don't have faith on them, on their product. So when a new firm will come together with that firm which already have some image, which already have goodwill in the economy, in the eyes of public, obviously the other firm, that will help to the other firm to introduce their innovative commercial activity in this competitive market, in this economy, and because of that it will reduce the risk for the new and innovative entrepreneurs to introduce their product in this market. That is clear. Next, that is advanced technology. Advanced technology, yes, by joining together as Indian company, if they jointly or joining their hand with foreign company, they can get the benefit of advanced technology, because these foreign and developed country, they have sophisticated advanced technology, they have innovative method, innovative ideas. So by joining their hand with these companies, with foreign companies, Indian company will also able to produce the goods and all will also able to face the competition at the global level, because they have, these foreign companies have a varieties of advanced technology, they have innovative technology, sophisticated technology, and by adopting these technology by Indian company, they can get much benefit in their production method and the process of production. Clear? Next, that is large capital. Obviously, when two or more than two companies, it's not necessary that only two companies can join together, more than two companies can also join together to perform any commercial business activity. Yes, large, I'm talking about large capital. If in joint enterprises, when two companies or more than two companies come together and contributing their capital, it's result in huge amount of capital. As you know, when two or more than two companies, if we are talking about companies, obviously one company that require a huge amount of investment to invest. So when they have, when two companies join together, both the company have their sufficient fund, adequate amount of fund, a large amount of capital. So it's very beneficial for both the companies or the companies which come together or jointly together their enterprises with each other, and they don't face any type of difficulty to arrange the capital from the market. They will get the capital in a easy way. That is clear. Next, that is production for small companies. Yes, this enterprises, joint venture ideas, it is best for the small companies. Yes, as you know, if I'm talking about our country, India, the small companies, they're facing lots of competition for the large companies, for MNCs. So for that, they can go with this idea, joint venture, and give competition to the large firm, to the MNCs. So in this, a small firm, they can join together to compete with the large firm. Two or more than two small firms can join together and face the competition, give the competition to the large firm, and also compete with the large firm. As individually this small firm, they don't have that much of capital, they are not, because of lacking of capital, they are not able to increase their production using advanced and latest technology. So while they are joining together, while these small companies joining together, they are not facing any type of difficulty which they were be facing at the time when they perform their activity individually. So because for protecting themselves, for protecting itself, these small industries, small companies should join together and can compete with the large business houses, large companies. That is clear. Now I am going to explain. Yes, now I'm going to explain last topic of this chapter, form of private, public and global enterprise, that is public-private partnership. Public-private partnership, firstly we should understand that the meaning of this partnership, then we are going to the other things. When a government sector and private business enterprises which is funded and operated through a partnership of government and one or more private sector company, then it should be considered as public private partnership. When there should be when a private sector jointly with public sector, or when a government services or private enterprises which is funded and operated through a partnership of government and private sector companies, either one private company or with the more private companies, when government to the jointly together, then it is to be considered as public private partnership. Public private partnership, ठीक है ना. These are to be also known as P3, PPP, PQ means public private partnership. That is clear to everyone. Now some example I am giving to you to make you understand in a better way. That is, for example, a hospital building which is financed and constructed by private developer, private businessman, and it was leased to hospital authority, and these private companies, they act as a landlord of that building and provide housekeeping services and other non, whereas hospital services, these are provided by the government sector. That type of partnership are to be considered as public private partnership. Means when hospital is to be constructed by private sector, it is to be built and constructed and hand over to the government to run these hospital, and even this private company, they act as a landlord and providing housekeeping services and other non-medical facilities, whereas the hospital services, that is to be given by government. That type of partnership are to be considered as public private partnership. That is clear. Now to make you more understand, we should go through with the features of public private partnership. First, that is contract between public sector and private party. Yes, in this partnership, it is a contract, it is an agreement between public sector and private party, in which private party, they provide some services, public services to the public, and bearing financial, technical and operational risk. Means in that type they agreed with the government that we are providing a public services and bearing all the risk like financial risk, technical risk and operational risk that is to be required to perform this partnership activity. That is clear. Next, that is cost of using services. In some types of private public partnership, the cost of using services is to be borne by user of services and not by taxpayer, and in some the cost of providing services is borne wholly or partially by the government. Means in that type of business, those who are using that services, they are bearing the cost of that services. The person is going to bear that cost, and not by the taxpayer, means not by those who have provided. And in some public private partnership, the cost is to be borne by wholly or partially, means full amount or the half or some amount is to be bear by the government, and rest of the amount is to be bear by the service user. That is clear. Next, that is provision of capital subsidy. One example I can give, that is metro facility, Delhi metro facility, in which the construction, the services that is to be provided by private and public partnership, and the public, it is for providing public services, and that you can, most of the people are know it very well, and also experiencing also experience of the by moving in metro. That is clear. Next, that is provision of capital subsidy. Yes, project which have aim to create public goods in infrastructure structure. In that type of project, government provide a capital subsidy in the form of one-time grant to make it more attractive to the private sector. Means to attract the private sector, that they can come and join with and form a partnership with the public sector. They are providing a capital subsidies as a one-time grant to make it. So because of that, the private sector they are attracting with it, and especially it is to be done for what? For creating a public goods in infrastructure sector. Suppose as a metro, one example I have given for that. And in some cases, government may provide revenue subsidy also, including tax break, or by providing guaranteed annual revenue to the private sector. They are attracting to them that they will come with public sector, government sector, and perform this social activity. Clear? Next, that is sharing of revenue. Yes, the revenue of public-private partnership is shared between the government and private sector according to the ratio which is given in the agreement, which is to be decided in the agreement. In that agreed ratio, the revenue is to be divided between government and private sector. That is clear. Last, that is problem with privy. Yes, some problems also, and the main problem with this partnership, private public partnership, is that private investors, obviously, as they are establishing any type of business, running their any type of business, carried out their any type of activities to earn more and more profit. So these investors, they obtain a rate of return that was higher than the government bond rate. Means they are expecting that, and even they are charging high rate of interest, higher return, even which was much higher than the government bond rate, even though most of the income risk is borne by the public sector, not by the private sector. So this is the main problem in this partnership. This is the one drawback in this partnership. That is clear. So the chapter have finished. That is public-private partnership.